Alright, this is IRP reporting or report number 2. So this week, Manny and I, our experimental plans, we were going to get our primers figured out because we got them and they didn't have labels on them of if they were forward or reverse primers. And we also were hoping to get our DNA isolated, and then we're also hoping to run a PCR. That way we could have that ready to run on a gel. The things that we were able to accomplish this week is that we were able to isolate our DNA from our samples. We were able to isolate it from popcorn kernels, from Doritos, from tortilla, corn tortilla, corn husk, and then also a miniature corn. So we were able to isolate that DNA. We weren't able to run a PCR. We are going to go in tomorrow morning, Saturday, and we're going to hopefully use the nano drop and confirm the amounts of our DNA, and then we're going to run a PCR either tomorrow or we're going to run a PCR on Monday. That way we've got some samples to come back to on Tuesday to use during class time. That way we can have our gel ran, and then we can know if we need to adjust anything for this coming week. For what my individual contribution for the group was this week, when we were in class, we were isolating the DNA samples, and so Manny was trying to figure out the forward and reverse primers and figure out which one is which, so we know what it's going to do, and know just to be sure which is doing the forward and the reverse. And then along with that, during that time while Manny was figuring that out, I was working on isolating or smashing our samples so that we could use them to collect DNA or extract DNA from them. The experimental or scientific challenges that we faced this week, well, one of them was when we got our primers. Again, they weren't labeled, and there were 4 primers in there, and so we weren't sure why exactly there were 4 because it's what the previous group had used. And so we did some online research to find that. Manny took lead on that. And so we found out that some of them are primers for the specific DNA sequence that we're looking for, and others are for just the DNA in general so that we can amplify the whole DNA. Then another challenge that we ran into is when trying to smash up our samples. They weren't working very well because they were plant and they were soft, and some had like liquids or juices, and so we didn't want to smash them and have liquids come out because then we would possibly lose sample in that liquid, lose DNA that we could isolate. And so what we did in order to fix or solve them, what I was able to do is I went and talked with Sister Walker and found out things that we could use liquid nitrogen, and that we could use that to instantly freeze our samples. That way we could smash them up easier, and then we would be able to use them in the isolation kit. So we were using a DNA isolation kit from Epoch, I think is how you say it, and it mentioned how the samples need to be frozen. That way when you use it, it's able to extract the DNA from it better. And so those are the kind of the things that we were looking at, is like, what can we do to isolate our DNA without losing any sample, and then also just figuring out what our primers were. So hopefully tomorrow we'll get our PCR ran, and if we don't do it tomorrow, then we'll definitely do it Monday. That way we've got it ready for Tuesday in class. And those are the things that we've done, and we'll be able to adjust them as we go. So we are behind a little bit, but I think we'll be able to catch back up this coming week because now we've got our DNA isolated, and as long as there's DNA in our samples, we'll be able to keep using that and tweak just the PCR as we go. We'll be able to run some gels.